As we're officially entering the holiday season here for 2024, for today's Critical Thought, I want to talk a little bit more about digital stores, and specifically about why, despite all the years of competitors, sales, bundles, and whatnot, Steam still ranks as the highest, and why no one has yet managed to topple the $10 trillion gorilla that it is. We won't be doing any kind of in-game footage for today's video because, well, it will just be showing Steam store pages. And I'll just put a few static images here for effect. But it's been just under a week since the Video Game Awards for 2024 ran, and we watched it, got confused by it, and we saw all kinds of announcements, big announcements, small announcements, confusing announcements. But none of them managed to be as interesting or as kind of wide-reaching in terms of its potential change than what occurred a few years ago, when it was announced that Supergiant Games was working on a brand new title, that little-known one known as Hades, but that it was also going to not be featured on Steam, but a as-yet-unknown digital store, and it was revealed it was going to be the Epic Games Store. And this kicked off what would kind of be this period of a new digital store war, with Epic, the ones who made that other relatively unknown game Fortnite, getting into the market, allowing people to buy games on their client, have sales, lots and lots of them. And probably one of the more far-reaching aspects, reducing the royalty rate for anyone who puts games onto Epic, and also paying developers for one-year exclusivity deals to help get games on the store and to help finish them in the first place. And things were very much set up to provide people with finally a legitimate counter to Steam. And then we fast forward, and how many of you remember there's an Epic Games Store? How many of you even use it on a regular basis? Probably not most of you, especially if you're a long-time fan watching this. And today, the Epic Games Store kind of occupies that same territory as some of the other clients. Origin, Ubisoft Connect, even stuff like Games Pass, GOG, itch.io. They're all kind of swarming around down here, and Steam is still the 80 trillion billion miles above the surface in terms of its success. And the question still gets asked, why? Why does Steam remain the best, and why has there yet to be an actual viable competitor to this? Now, at the kind of basic level, a digital store needs to provide protection from the consumer and protection from the client, or the company. Consumers want to make sure they can buy and download games that, well, don't have tons and tons of viruses that won't blow up their computers. Studios and developers need to be able to put their games someplace that they know that people aren't going to, steal lots and lots of keys, pay with fraudulent credit cards, things like that. And that's what all these store pages have at their basic level. But what Valve has done with Steam, and what has yet to be kind of duplicated anywhere else, has been this idea of turning the store or the client itself into its own service for developers and consumers. And over the years, this has certainly grown for people who play games on Steam. It's not just about buying games on Steam. It's not only just about being able to, get sales. You have community features. You can share stuff with everyone else. You have the workshop, where is perhaps one of the best kind of consolidated sources of modding this side of something like, I think, was it like the Nexus or whatever, for the Elder Scrolls games. You have, of course, the ability to message people. You have direct communications with everyone. Despite, the unlawfulness of forums and discussion boards, it's still an option there, which could probably be one of the few issues with Steam that we'll come back to in a few minutes. The point is that there is far more value to the consumer to be on Steam than it is to be anywhere else. And while this is great for the consumer and gives a lot of trust to Steam, this is also provides benefits for the developers. you're getting onto a store that has almost limitless support and fans of it. You don't have to worry about someone shopping somewhere else or wanting to only download your game on Uconnect or on Origin. Again, the de facto answer for most people is I want to have it on Steam. For developers, it means getting access to a store that provides you with a lot of the basic tools for marketing your game. Being able to design your own Steam store page is a really good example. But this has even been extended further with the rise of developer-led events. Yes, we all know about the Steam sales, but now you have stuff like Little Narracon, Women-Led Games, Tacticon, Bullet Heaven Festival, lots of cons and all that. But these are ways to provide more value and more specifically more marketing events for the developer side of things. And it's something that has yet to be replicated on any other digital store. If we were kind of being very specific, there's still a few things that other stores do that Steam does not. Probably the big one from Ubisoft Connect, which I'm not sure they still do it, is that by completing specific challenges and games, you get kind of the Uconnect points or Ubi points, whatever they're called, that you can then trade in to kind of buy stuff on the store. Imagine if on Steam you got a bounty that for every achievement you get like 5 cents or a quarter. People would probably be like millionaires overnight with all the games that we play. And the other thing that we see would be like kind of having like a premium service or a subscription service that would be the Games Pass and the other models, which Steam doesn't really seem like it's set up for that, considering how open it is. And all this stuff matters. It may not matter, or some of it may not matter to a few of you watching, but all this adds a very important X factor to being on Steam that you can't or hasn't been replicated anywhere else. And this gets at a very important point when it comes to kind of comparing this to live service. That when a live service game comes out to compete with whoever, you're not competing with that game as it was on day one. You're competing with that game today, with all the bells, whistles, and all that, all laid out, and all that the consumer is going to be comparing and contrasting. And this is something that no other digital store, even Epic, with all the Fortnite bucks they've thrown at it, has managed to really compete with Steam. Because, again, when we talk about direct competition in this respect, you have to provide something that is legitimately different and obviously better than what the other store, the other game is doing. And have we seen a store do that? And before developers ask, I'm talking about from the consumer side of things. Because if you don't have consumers, you don't really have a store page. Now, and while this video has been largely supportive of Valve and Steam, there are still some legitimate problems and concerns with the platform. The first I said is the aforementioned discussion, community, stuff like that, that still feels very much like the Wild West. And I do believe Valve should provide developers with more means of kind of countering people who are just there to cause trouble, to attack other consumers, to attack developers, things like that. The 30% royalty rate is still way too high for a lot of developers. Again, it doesn't matter if you're making millions and millions of copies sold, which for every developer watching, I'm sure you are rolling in your millions right now. But it still feels weird that there's not like a scale based on number of copies sold. That 30% is for someone who may have only sold 50 copies, or someone who sold 50,000 copies. And Valve and Steam are still very much like slow to the draw in terms of adding new features or new support. They keep things relatively close to the vest in that respect. But they still add a lot of value to it. And I guess for those of you watching this, what are your major issues with Steam? What are some things that you wish could be fixed? Because that, I think, is, again, very important both from the consumer and developer side. So to wrap things up for this relatively quick critical thought, Valve and Steam are the 80 trillion pound gorilla when it comes to digital stores. And even with any issues that are there, it is still uniformly better to be on Steam than to either sell the game on your own or to be on any other digital store. The innate value that has been built up from Valve and Steam over the past almost like 20 years now is undisputed. But it's still this case where competition is good. Competition is healthy. It makes or forces people to improve and to look at the issues they've had to try and change them. But it does again raise that point that if Epic can't really compete with Valve, who can? Again, that's not a metaphorical question there. Because at this point, and even as we're recording this in the middle of December, that there are rumors that Valve may be wanting to release like a console or some kind of version like that on top of course, the Steam Deck that people have really grown to love. So if you have your own, handheld Steam, your console Steam, and your PC and other platform Steam, what will that mean for other platforms? Who knows at this point? But with that little mysterious doom and gloom, we'll wrap things up for our video, and of course we'll prepare for the next Steam sale, or the next big Steam festival that I'm sure will be coming relatively soon by the time you're watching this. Thanks for watching, and a special thank you to our Patreon supporters. If you enjoyed the video, do the YouTubing stuff, be sure to visit our Discord and Patreon, and you're interested in more of my thoughts on design, check out my game design books.